What's up, guys? We are back with another Mythic Legions review, and we're jumping into the War of the Aetherblade Mythic Legions Tactics Deluxe Builder sets. And I'm starting off with the male elf pack because, frankly, I've got tons of orcs, but I don't have a lot of elves, at least not 2.0 elves, and it's been a while since we've had a lot of this kind of Legions figure, so it's just something to revisit for me. Now, for the uninitiated, this is a video game exclusive release figure, so it was tied to that video game Kickstarter, but more specifically, these are all deluxe sets. So they include a single figure that have a bunch of extra parts to mix and match or of course use elsewhere, and we've had stuff like this since the beginning of the line. Now these guys do come in a little bit of a different style packaging. It's game themed, but it's also bigger. So you've got the double wide style packaging, figure in the window, video game logo down there on the bottom. We've got faction card on one side, there's a bio on the other side as well, and then the back of these packages are definitely unique because of the video game tie-in. So you've got actual video game screenshots as well as sort of a write-up down there on the bottom as well. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Mythic Legions Tactics War of the Aetherblade Deluxe Male Elf Legion Builder. That's a mouthful. And I had to do this one first because if memory serves, we have not had a figure like this in a very long time. Like going back to maybe Soul Spiller, I'd have to check for sure, but it's been a long time since we got a full-on humanoid male 2.0 body. We've obviously gotten some females recently. We've gotten Goblin 2.0 figures, things like that. We got a Skeleton 2.0 in the All-Stars 5 with Okiatos. But this, I think it's been since like the Elf Shadow Ranger since we got something like this. And 2.0 stuff is definitely starting to dry up more and more on the aftermarket. They're just not as plentiful as they were when Advent of Decay was, you know, new. So this is definitely a way for folks to sort of, well, it was a way, I suppose, for folks to get more 2.0 bodies and parts. And of course, that's a big factor here when it comes to these sets. It's all about parts. I've got two of them, so we'll be able to sort of show some swaps more easily. This is sort of like the default loadout for this guy. I did throw the pauldrons on just to start with because there's multiple sets here. So this is kind of how he comes right out of the box. And if you're familiar with 2.0 figures, there is nothing new here. They didn't reinvent the wheel. This is the same thing we've seen since Advent of Decay. If you're not familiar with 2.0 figures, they started in the second Kickstarter, Advent of Decay, and introduced slimmer bodies, females specifically, slimmer bodies through and through, and then a different torso system. So let's move this guy around, see what he can do. He does have the ball peg neck still. You do have, you know, up and down. He's got hair. There's like 5 heads in this package, so we'll talk about the rest here shortly. You got your tilt side to side. You've got rotation. Hair's going to get in the way, of course. Arms out at the shoulders. Pauldrons on these guys are typically smaller, so they do allow for better range, so you can still get his arm to go pretty much all the way out. Swivel forward and backward. You've got your single jointed, but I mean, it's slightly better than 90 or like 91 degrees maybe. You've got swivel there also. Gauntlet swivel, wrist swivel, and hinge as well. The big difference between these figures outside of proportions is the torso, because these have a diaphragm cut, so they allow you, you know, to do this kind of number. So tilt side to side, backward, forward. They do have a better crunch in many ways than some of the 1.0 figures, but it's all personal preference. I still prefer 1.0. And then you've got your waist twist down there instead of a 1.0 style ball peg waist. Legs go pretty much all the way out. You can get them to do the splits, kick forward, backward. You do have a thigh twist, which is really nicely hidden with these legs because of the sort of scale aspect of them. And then we've got our single knee down here, rather, not an elbow, that's up top. And these also do have a little bit of swivel to them. You do have swivel at the top of the ankle where it pegs into the leg, and then you've got rocker and you've got hinges down there as well. I will say the one thing that does seem to be a little bit different, not like in the sense that they've gone back and recreated everything from scratch, but the ankles do seem to be slightly more robust this time around. They feel a little tighter. That's one of the bigger complaints with 2.0 figures, is that their ankles seem to give out over time, and I can definitely attest to that. But he seems all right right out of the package. Otherwise, if you've gotten any 2.0 figures ever, really, you basically know what to expect here. Now, as far as the overall look and feel here, I'm going to bring in the second figure that I have so I can show you all of the body parts, well, almost all the body parts that you can use here while we're talking about this kind of stuff. So this, again, is kind of how this figure comes in the box. This is the default loadout, and I put the matching green pauldrons on him. This one has a swapped out torso. So you've got this big sort of, it's like the Dark Knight Goblin style torso that we see in a copper color with a copper loincloth. You've got different pauldrons here, and then we've got one of many heads. I just grabbed one random head and threw it on there. This one does seem to be a little bit more cobbled together. There's not as much consistency in the design, so obviously you can change that by moving parts around and kind of figuring out what suits you best. I just wanted to be sort of quick and dirty about it. I do really like the way these parts look, though. Again, it's a Legion builder, but it's not a normal Legion builder. This is not a Legion builder in the sense that he has no paint. It's a Legion builder in the sense that this is meant to be used to build up your ranks. It just also happens to be fully painted. And there is a ton of detail all over these. And if you're familiar with Mythic Legions, you don't really need me telling you. They all come with a ton of detail. And I've been a big fan of the Elf style 2.0 bodies and parts in particular. I'm talking mostly about this torso for a really long time. I really love it because it's like a leather sort of torso, and there's all sorts of buckles and baubles all over it. But I really like this green color. It definitely fits an elf. And of course, if you've got the Whisperling green heads on, I think it kind of, adds a little bit more. It emphasizes this type of elf being one of the green ones. But then at the same time, I really like this copper color on this torso and this loincloth. Again, I'm not really sure how I'm going to integrate it because it does sort of seem to be a little out of place here, but that color is terrific. It's very much reminding me of Lord Veterus, so that's a really cool little thing there. And then we've got two different style pauldrons. So you've got the very elven style pauldrons with the one on the green one. And then this one is very much like the knight style pauldrons, the 2.0 knight style. And this is very much just your sort of Legion Builder style elf head up here. Just done up in silver, but you've got the darker skin on this one. And there's a bunch of different elf types in this pack also. But this one, this is what? This is the Malachi Cinderhorn head. Be based on that headpiece there. So you've got more of that copper also. So you can sort of pull the copper in here if you use that head sculpt maybe. But I really like the Whisperling Elves. I'm a big fan. That's one thing I regret not getting enough of back in the 2.0 Kickstarter days was elves. I just don't have a lot. The Xylernian Guard has definitely helped quite a bit, but I don't have a lot of 2.0. So this adds a little bit to my ranks. But this is a great combination of parts. Again, if you want, you can bash them together, make different combinations, but it's that same Mythic Legion style sculpt and paint detail that you're used to. But again, there's just a lot of little things about the 2.0 bodies that I really like. Tons of little intricate detail. I love all the buckles on this particular torso. There's a lot of buckles on these legs as well. And then you've got more of that sort of scale mail style armor for the thighs, which again hides that thigh cut really nicely. But the colors are really unique here. That's also a big factor for this particular set. These colors are not all that represented throughout the line. Well, silver is obviously very much represented in Legions, but there's not a lot of greens, and certainly not a lot of greens like this. Even the elves that we got in Advent of Decay, they're a more foresty green in many ways, and then you've got this copper color, which of course, while it at certain points does seem a little out of place to me on this guy, it is a very unique piece. We don't have a lot of this color at all in the entire line, 1.0 or otherwise. So there's a lot of cool parts here. And again, this is just a quick way to sort of show you how these figures can come right out of the box if you just swap a few parts. But there's definitely more possibilities once we get into the rest of the accessories. But tons of sculpt, tons of paint detail. Again, not just your standard Legion builder. This is a Legion builder in the sense that you're going to build your ranks with him, but he's also going to have some pretty gaudy, very detailed armor. Now, as far as some size comparisons go, let's do other Legions, of course. So here we've got some 1.0 figures. We've got a Dwarf, Joran Runeshaper on the left, and we've got Atlas, a 1.0 standard 1.0 figure on the right. And this gives you a pretty good idea of exactly how the 2.0 figures will stack up. They are taller than dwarves, they're slightly shorter than your average Mythic Legion's 1.0 figure, but proportionally, they're just thinner. That's really all it comes down to. They are slimmer, thinner figures. Let's do some other lines, so let's move Joran aside. Let's do a Marvel Legends BAF. There's the controller. And let's move Atlas aside. Let's do a Figuarts. Here is the Saiyan Raised on Earth Goku. And let's move the controller aside. Let's do a Super 7 figure. And here is a Cobra Bat from the G.I. Joe Ultimates, although he is arguably tall for that line. And let's move Goku aside, and let's do an AWOC. So here's Pale from Animal Warriors of the Kingdom. And then let's do one more, just happens to be another G.I. Joe figure, but let's go Hasbro for that comparison to Hasbro 112 stuff. So there is Spirit from Classified. So he's basically going to fit in with anything that all your normal Mythic Legion stuff fits into. There's nothing different about it except for the fact that 2.0 bodies are just slightly smaller proportionally. Now, as far as accessories goes, these guys come with a lot. That's the name of the game when it comes to these video game Legion Builder packs. Not only are you getting options for pop and swap when it comes to the figure itself, you basically get a weapons pack with each figure. You get a small armory for each one. So as I've already mentioned, I've shown you some of the extra parts that you get. So just to run through them again, you get this extra head with the dark flesh underneath. It also has a neck, an exposed neck as well. You get the Knight style pewterish pauldrons. We get the copper torso, the copper loincloth, and then we also get these green pauldrons over here. So you get 2 sets of pauldrons, and there's 2 of the heads. Now we also get 3 other heads. So you get this head right here, which is like one of the ranger heads. So you've got slightly darker flesh. It's not as dark as this guy, but he's got the green eyes, and he's got this sort of like spicy mustardy cowl, which is pretty interesting. It's definitely a unique color in the line, but there's a lot of that with these weapons too. And you also get a neck that goes along with this head sculpt. We get the unadorned sort of high elf head. So you get just the Caucasian style flesh and neck with the green eyes, and it's basically the same kind of hair situation as this guy has, but he has no crown or anything like that. So you get one of these, and it's a different flesh tone than the hooded head, I should mention. And then we get a Whisperling armored head that does not have a neck because this guy has the green neck, so you wouldn't need a second one. So you get the silver helmet with the exposed face this time around. And I really like that. I'm a big fan of the Whisperling elves to begin with. And then we get a bunch of weapons. So to start with, let's see, we will just run through it in order here. So we get the big, the big spiked mace staff weapon. And a lot of this is really tied in with this color. It's really weird. Like a lot of the weaponry is very much the exact same color. Well, the paint accents anyway, are the same color as this dude's hood. So that's kind of weird. And it's a very unique color. It's not something we've seen in the line really. So you get that. And then we get this big monster sword, which this is one of, well, there goes the bow. I really like this sword. It's one of my favorites. You've got a little bit of sort of like a green paint and then a red handle down here, so this will match with this really well. We get the big, very cumbersome, I don't know, this looks very impractical. I've always thought it looked super impractical, but super cool. The big elven axe with that sort of mustardy color for the handle. And there is a lot of paint on these weapons, so even more so the fact that this is a Legion builder, there's still a lot of paint on these weapons. Seems slightly more than usual. We get a sword that has a mustard sheath. This is the slightly thinner blade, red handle with green jewel at the bottom. And then you get sort of the standard sword with the green jewels and the sort of mustard color, but it's a slightly larger blade. It's wider than that other one. We get the elven bow, and I've long said I'm not a big fan of bow and arrows for any figure. I do like the way this looks. I'm a big fan of its design. I just always find them really impractical. And these figures don't have vertical hinges on their hands, so it does kind of make sometimes holding stuff like this and the crossbow or anything like that a little bit difficult. You get that. We get the arrows, more of that mustard color with the red, the flechette or whatever that thing's called. You get a single arrow, which, by the time I'm done with this, I'll probably have launched this across the room. So you get a single arrow. And we get the round shield, but it's got more of that paint on it. So you've got the green around the outer rim and then the yellow on the inside. And then you've got, what's really weird, you've got a painted handle on the inside with that mustardy color. And then we, of course, because you can't not have this, we do get the ever-present strap, but no back adapters. I'm hurting for them. I'm not really. No, that's absolutely a lie. But it is another instance of us not getting back adapters, which I don't need them, but maybe somebody does. So one thing to keep in mind, if you are hurting for back adapters, you're not going to get them here. So these guys come with a lot of stuff. Again, it's all about part swapping. You get enough heads for an entire legion, literally, of figures. You just don't get enough bodies, but you can make a bunch of different combinations between the parts you have available to suit whatever head you go with. If you want to use the mustard head, if you want to use the Whisperling armored head, you've got different armor pieces to accent that and sort of tie things together. And then, of course, a veritable armory of weapons. So yeah, overall, I mean, really happy with this set. I guess a lot of it is the fact that it's finally come out and we have these, so there's like a big sigh of relief involved, as well as that this thing is sort of over and we have our figures. But of course they delivered on them too. These are pretty much everything I wanted them to be. I'm really, really happy with all the parts here, with all the different colors that we get. A lot of my enjoyment here is just some of these colors that aren't all that common. We don't really have a lot of these greens in the line. You know, Thistlethorn is kind of that green, but he's not exactly the same. And we don't have a lot of this copper color either. And there's just a bunch of different variety when it comes to the heads, the paint schemes, the colors, and the overall types of heads that we're getting with this set, that you get to make whatever kind of elf you want. And despite the fact that I'm not the biggest pop and swap guy, I like to think I am, but I'm really not, I do love the fact that we have all of these options because I'm just going to put them on a bunch of different figures. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legions Tactics Deluxe Male Elf Legion Builder. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.